When my sister told me she was contesting our father's will, the one that left me our childhood home, I collapsed on my kitchen floor sobbing. 3 days later, I was standing in a lawyer's office discovering she'd been secretly selling off our family heirlooms for years. That's when I realized family ties can strangle you just as easily as they can support you. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story twists more than a mountain road in a hurricane. I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. Not about Clara. We were supposed to be the inseparable Morgan sisters, the ones who survived our mother's early death, our father's stern silence, and those endless winters in our little coastal village where everyone knew everyone's business. Or so I thought. My name is Eleanor Morgan. I'm 56, divorced for longer than I care to remember, and until 6 months ago, I managed the little bookstore our grandmother left us on Main Street. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. A quiet life in a quiet town, exactly how I liked it. The morning it all began was deceptively ordinary. September sunshine streaming through my kitchen window, coffee brewing, toast burning slightly because I was distracted by the mail. Among the usual bills was an official-looking envelope from Patterson & Sons, my father's attorneys. Dad had passed 3 months earlier. A quiet death in his sleep at 82. Clara and I had been through the funeral together, leaning on each other the way we always had. Or the way I thought we always had. I tore open the envelope, expecting some final paperwork regarding his estate. Dad wasn't wealthy by any means, but he'd left behind the old Victorian house we grew up in and a modest savings. The letter inside, however, was requesting my presence at a reading of the will. Apparently, there were complications that required both daughters to be present. Complications. Such a polite word for betrayal. I called Clara immediately. Her voice had that artificial brightness that should have been my first warning. Oh, you got one too? I'm sure it's nothing, Ellie. Probably just legal formalities. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my sister, my only family left. The person who held my hand at Mom's funeral when I was 12 and she was 14. The one who knew all my secrets, or so I thought. Script part separator ===. When I walked into Patterson's office the next morning, Clara was already there. Dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that probably cost more than I made in a month at the bookstore. That was Clara, always a step ahead, always perfectly put together. Our father's attorney, Mr. Patterson, a man who'd watched us grow up and now had gray eyebrows so thick they looked like storm clouds, sat behind his massive oak desk, looking uncomfortable. "Eleanor, please sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair next to Clara. She barely looked at me. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. "I'll be direct. Your father's will is quite simple. The family home and the majority of his assets go to Eleanor." The silence that followed felt like a physical presence in the room. "That can't be right," Clara finally said, her voice sharp. "We were supposed to split everything equally." Patterson adjusted his glasses. "Your father amended his will last year. He was of sound mind, I assure you. Why would he do this?" Clara demanded, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the leather armrests. "He left a letter explaining his decision," Patterson replied, sliding an envelope across the desk toward me. Clara snatched it before I could reach it. "This is ridiculous. I've been the one visiting him every weekend. I'm the one who took him to all his doctor's appointments." I stared at my sister, confusion washing over me. "Clara, I visited him too. We both did." Her laugh was cold. "Oh please, Eleanor. Your weekly phone calls hardly count as being there for him." Patterson cleared his throat again. "There's more. Clara, your father was aware of the loans he made to you over the past 5 years. Those amounts, totaling nearly $200,000, were considered your advance on the inheritance." My head snapped toward my sister. 200,000. What loans? Clara's face flushed red. "That was between Dad and me. Private business arrangements." "Private," I echoed, feeling like I'd walked into someone else's life. "Since when do we keep secrets like that from each other?" Script part separator ===. Private business arrangements. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "We've shared everything since we were kids, Clara." Her eyes narrowed, a look I'd never seen directed at me before. We're not kids anymore, Eleanor. Some of us had to grow up and handle real responsibilities. Mr. Patterson shuffled papers nervously. Ladies, perhaps you'd like a moment. No, Clara snapped, standing abruptly. I'm contesting this will. Dad wasn't in his right mind last year. Everyone knows it. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. What are you talking about? He was sharp as ever. Was he? Or was that what you needed to believe while you were busy playing shopkeeper with that little bookstore instead of noticing how he was declining? Her voice dripped with contempt. I'm calling Marcus Bentley. Marcus Bentley. The most aggressive estate attorney in 3 counties. The man who'd made a career out of tearing families apart over inheritance disputes. Clara, please. I reached for her hand. Let's talk about this. She jerked away. There's nothing to discuss. This will is a joke. She turned to Patterson. Expect Bentley's office to contact you by tomorrow. Then she was gone, leaving behind only the scent of her expensive perfume and the ruins of everything I thought I knew about us. I sat there, numb, as Patterson handed me my father's letter. I'm sorry, Eleanor. This happens sometimes with estates. His voice faded to background noise as I stared at the envelope. My father's shaky handwriting addressed it simply to my Eleanor. I couldn't open it. Not there. Not with my world collapsing around me. I drove home in a daze, past the familiar storefronts of our little town, where Clara and I had once shared ice cream cones and secrets. The same town where, apparently, my sister had been leading a different life than the one she'd shared with me. By the time I reached my small cottage, the one I'd moved to after my divorce, leaving Clara and Dad in the family home, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. Script part separator equals. Inside, I collapsed onto my sofa and finally opened my father's letter. His handwriting, once strong and bold, had grown fragile with age. My dearest Eleanor, it began. If you're reading this, then the truth I've hidden is finally coming to light. I've left the house to you because it's always been yours in spirit. You were the one who loved it, who fought to preserve every creaking floorboard and chipped tile while Clara wanted to sell it off to developers. My breath caught. 3 years ago, Clara had mentioned a developer's interest in our property, but she'd said Dad refused the offer. Had she been pushing for it? What you don't know, Dad's letter continued, is that Clara has been pressuring me to sell for years. The loans I gave her weren't for her design business as she claimed, but to cover gambling debts. Eleanor, your sister has a problem she won't acknowledge. Last month, I discovered she'd been taking items from the house, your mother's jewelry, antiques, even your childhood mementos, and selling them. I gasped, remembering how certain family treasures had mysteriously disappeared during spring cleaning. Clara had blamed the housekeepers. I'm leaving you the house because I fear what Clara would do with it. But I worry this decision will destroy what's left of your relationship. For that, I am truly sorry. There's more you should know. In my study, behind the painting of the lighthouse, is a safe. The combination is your mother's birthday. What you find inside will explain everything. My phone rang, jolting me from the letter. It was Jessica from the bookstore. Eleanor, there's someone here asking about buying the store. Says Clara sent him to discuss terms. My blood turned to ice. What? Some developer. Says you and Clara agreed to sell both properties together, the bookstore and your dad's house. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. Tell him to leave immediately. The bookstore is not for sale. I had to get to my father's house, to that safe, before Clara emptied it of whatever secrets it held. Script part separator equals. Driving to my father's house, I replayed every conversation with Clara from the past year. How many lies had been hidden in her smiles? How many times had she mentioned investment opportunities while secretly gambling away our family legacy? I pulled into the driveway just as a black Mercedes was leaving. Behind the wheel sat Marcus Bentley himself, Clara's new attack dog. He nodded at me with the cold acknowledgement of a predator spotting prey. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house felt different, emptier somehow. Family photos were missing from the hallway. Mother's antique vase no longer graced the entryway table. I ran upstairs to Dad's study, my heart pounding. The painting of the lighthouse, the one Mom had painted the summer before she got sick, still hung on the wall. I lifted it with trembling hands to reveal the wall safe I'd forgotten existed. Mother's birthday, May 22nd, 1943. I entered the numbers and held my breath. The safe swung open. Inside sat a thick manila folder, a small jewelry box, and a USB drive. I grabbed everything and stuffed it into my bag just as I heard the front door open. Eleanor. Clara's voice carried up the stairs. What are you doing here? I emerged from the study clutching my findings. Finding out de truffe. Clara's eyes locked on my bag. Something flashed across her face. Fear, maybe? What did you take from the safe? Evidence. About everything, Clara. The gambling. The selling of Mom's things. Your plans with the developers. She climbed the stairs slowly, like a cat stalking a cornered mouse. You don't understand. This house sitting empty is a waste. The development would benefit the whole town. This house isn't empty. It's full of our memories, memories you've been selling off piece by piece. Those were just things, Eleanor. Things we don't need. They weren't yours to sell. My voice broke. How could you do this? After everything we've been through together? Clara's face hardened. Because some of us had to grow up and face reality. Dad babied you your whole life. The bookworm who needed protecting. She laughed bitterly. Meanwhile, I was drowning in debt while you played shopkeeper. Playing shopkeeper? That store was Grandma's legacy. Legacy. Clara spat the word. Legacy doesn't pay the bills, Eleanor. You've been living in a fantasy world your entire life. Script part separator ===. I backed toward the stairs, my bag clutched to my chest. At least my fantasy world didn't include betraying my own sister. Clara lunged forward suddenly, grabbing for the bag. Give me that. We struggled at the top of the stairs, the bag between us, neither willing to let go. Decades of sisterhood dissolved into this ugly tug-of-war over secrets and lies. Let go, Eleanor. Clara hissed. You have no idea what you're getting into. With one violent pull, the bag tore. Papers scattered across the hallway. The jewelry box tumbled down the stairs, popping open at the bottom to reveal Mom's emerald pendant, the one Clara had told me was lost years ago. We both froze, staring at the glittering green stone. You told me that was gone, I whispered. You said it must have been stolen during the plumbing repairs. Clara's face flushed. I needed the money, Ellie. I was going to replace it. With what? More lies. I gathered the fallen papers with shaking hands. How bad is it, Clara? The gambling. Something in her expression crumbled. For a moment, I saw my sister again, not this stranger who'd been living in her skin. It started small. Just poker nights with clients. Then online. Then. She looked away. I'm in trouble, Eleanor. Serious trouble. The kind that doesn't go away with a stern talking to from Dad. How much? 400,000. Maybe more. Her voice was barely audible. There are people who won't take no for an answer. People who know where we live. The blood drained from my face. That's why you want to sell everything. You're running. Not running. Surviving. Her eyes hardened again. And I'm not letting Dad's last act of favoritism stop me. My phone buzzed with a text. Jessica from the bookstore again. Eleanor, the man came back with papers. Says Clara already signed over her half of the store. What's going on? Script part separator ===. I stared at my phone in disbelief. You sold your half of the bookstore? That's grandmother's legacy, Clara. You don't have the right. I have every right, she snapped. It was left to both of us. And unlike you, I'm making practical decisions. Without even talking to me. My voice rose with each word. That store is my livelihood. You can find another job. One that actually pays. The development company is offering triple market value. Her eyes gleamed with something I couldn't recognize. We both know that dusty old shop barely breaks even. I clutched the scattered papers, trying to process this new betrayal. When were you planning to tell me? After they bulldozed it? Clara sighed dramatically. I was trying to spare you the drama. This is exactly why Dad treated you like a child. You're too emotional to handle business decisions. Don't you dare bring Dad into this. Not after what you've done. She stepped closer. What I've done is try to save us both. That developer wants everything. The bookstore, this house, even the little strip of beachfront property Dad bought in the 70s. One clean sale, and we both walk away with enough money to start fresh. I don't want to start fresh. This is my life, Clara. Well, it's about to change whether you want it to or not. Her smile turned cold. The will contest hearing is scheduled for next month. Until then, you can't sell anything Dad left you. But I can sell what's mine, like half that bookstore. My mind raced. The hearing, that's why you brought Bentley here today. Marcus thinks we have a strong case. Dad was showing signs of cognitive decline last year. That's a lie. He was perfectly lucid. Not according to his medical records. I froze. What medical records? Clara's smile widened. The ones his doctor will be presenting at the hearing. Understanding dawned horribly. You falsified medical documents. She shrugged. Let's just say Dr. Harris's gambling debts are even worse than mine. He's been very cooperative. Script part separator The enormity of Clara's betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My sister wasn't just contesting the will, she was manufacturing evidence, corrupting professionals, systematically dismantling our family legacy piece by piece. You can't do this, I whispered, though even to my own ears it sounded pathetic. I already have, Ellie. She reached out, almost gently, and I flinched away. You could make this easier on both of us. Sign the papers agreeing to sell everything, take your half of the money, and we'll both walk away. I clutched my bag tighter. And if I don't? Her eyes hardened. Then I'll destroy you in court. Every embarrassing detail about your failed marriage, every mistake you've ever made, it all comes out. Marcus is very thorough that way. You'd do that? To your own sister? I'd do whatever it takes to survive. She glanced at her diamond-studded watch. I have an appointment. Think it over, Eleanor. You have until Friday to decide. After she left, I sank to the floor of our childhood home, surrounded by scattered papers and broken trust. My phone buzzed again, Jessica, panicking about the developer who'd returned with a locksmith to assess the property. I forced myself to stand. Clara might have sacrificed our relationship on the altar of her debts, but I wouldn't surrender without a fight. Not the bookstore, not this house, and not the truth. With trembling hands, I gathered the fallen documents and began to read. What I found in those papers sent ice through my veins. This wasn't just about Clara's gambling addiction. The development company, Coastal Heights Properties, had connections to people Dad had warned me about years ago. People who'd tried to force him out of business in the 90s. And the signature on their incorporation documents. Thomas Weston, my ex-husband. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Clara hadn't just found these developers by accident. This was a coordinated attack on everything our father had built, orchestrated by the two people who knew exactly how to hurt me most. Script part separator My hands trembled as I spread the documents across my father's desk. The connections between Coastal Heights, Thomas, and Clara formed a web of deceit so intricate it took my breath away. Bank statements showed transfers from Thomas to Clara dating back 3 years, long before Dad's death. This wasn't opportunistic, it was premeditated. I called Jessica back. Don't let anyone change those locks. Call the police if you have to. I'm getting help. What kind of help? Her voice cracked with worry. The kind that fights fire with fire. I hadn't spoken to Michael Donovan in 15 years, not since he'd left our small town to become an attorney in the city. He'd been Dad's protege once, before a falling out I never understood. But Michael specialized in real estate fraud and inheritance disputes. If anyone could help me, it would be him. His office was an hour away, a sleek glass building that made me feel underdressed in my bookstore clothes. The receptionist eyed me skeptically until I mentioned my father's name. James Morgan's daughter? Michael appeared so suddenly I jumped. He looked older, distinguished in his tailored suit, but his eyes were the same, intense, calculating. Come. Inside his office, I poured out the whole story, watching his expression darken with each new revelation. Your sister falsified medical documents. His voice was dangerously quiet. That's what she implied. And she's working with my ex-husband to force sales of everything Dad left me. Michael's jaw tightened. Thomas Weston. I should have known he'd slither back eventually. You know him. Your father and I had a disagreement about Thomas 15 years ago. He met my eyes. I told James that Thomas was involved with some shady development deals. Your father didn't believe me. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. That's why you two stopped speaking. Michael nodded grimly. James thought I was jealous of your relationship with Thomas. Maybe I was, a little. But I was right about him. Heat rushed to my cheeks. Had Michael had feelings for me? The thought had never occurred to me back then. He shuffled through the documents I'd brought. This goes deeper than a simple will contest, Eleanor. These development plans, they're part of a larger scheme to buy up the entire waterfront. Your properties are the last holdouts. Can you help me? Michael's smile was wolfish. Nothing would give me greater pleasure than taking down Thomas Weston and exposing this fraud. He leaned forward. But you need to understand, this will get ugly. Clara won't be the only one playing dirty. I'm ready, I said, with more conviction than I felt. Then let's get to work. We have 4 weeks until the hearing, and a lot of ground to cover. He pulled out a legal pad. Starting with this doctor who's willing to lie about your father's mental state. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Script part separator ===. Michael worked tirelessly over the next week, digging into Dr. Harris's background and Clara's financial history. The more we uncovered, the worse it got. Clara hadn't just gambled away money, she'd taken out loans in Dad's name during the last year of his life. This could be criminal fraud, Michael said grimly, showing me the forged signatures. She could face jail time. The thought of my sister in prison made me physically ill, despite everything. I don't want that. I just want my life back. Michael's eyes softened. Sometimes we can't control the consequences once the truth comes out. 3 weeks before the hearing, Clara escalated. I arrived at the bookstore one morning to find water pouring from the ceiling. The apartment upstairs had mysteriously flooded overnight. Total accident, said the property manager, who happened to be Thomas's cousin. Insurance might cover it, but these old buildings could take months to repair. With the bookstore temporarily closed, my income vanished. The next day, I received notice that Clara had frozen our joint bank account, the one we'd used for Dad's care expenses. She's trying to starve you out, Michael observed, his voice tight with anger. Make you desperate enough to sell. That night, returning to my cottage, I found the locks changed and an eviction notice on the door. The notice cited unpaid property taxes I knew I'd paid. But the receipt showed the payment had been diverted to another account. Standing there, locked out of my own home with rain soaking through my clothes, something inside me hardened. Clara wasn't just fighting dirty, she was trying to destroy me. I called Michael from my car. No more holding back. Whatever you've found, whatever it takes, use it all. Script part separator ===. Michael's expression turned grim. Are you sure, Eleanor? Once we go down this path. I'm sure. The next morning, we filed emergency motions to stop the eviction and unfreeze my accounts. By afternoon, we had court orders in hand. The judge's expression when he saw the evidence of Clara's manipulations told me we'd found an ally. This is blatant harassment, he said, reviewing the falsified tax documents. While Michael handled the legal front, I tackled another angle. Dad's letter had mentioned the USB drive from the safe. I hadn't even looked at it yet. When I plugged it in, I found hundreds of audio files. Dad had been recording his conversations with Clara for over a year. You need to sign these papers, Dad. Clara's voice rang clearly through my laptop speakers. It's just routine estate planning. I'm not signing anything that gives you power of attorney, Dad replied firmly. Not after what you did with the beach property funds. Ilistened foraus, tis streaming down my face. Dad hadn't been declining mentally, he'd been gathering evidence. The final recording, dated just 2 weeks before his death, chilled me to the bone. I don't care what it takes, Thomas, Clara's voice hissed. Once Dad's gone, we move quickly. Eleanor's too sentimental to fight back effectively. And if she does? Thomas's familiar voice made my skin crawl. Then we break her, Clara replied. We know exactly how. I called Michael immediately. We need to subpoena Thomas for the hearing. His voice was quiet. Already done. But Eleanor, you should prepare yourself. Tomorrow's meeting with Clara won't be easy. Script part separator I walked into the settlement conference with my stomach in knots. Michael had arranged this meeting as a last chance to resolve things before the hearing, but I knew Clara wouldn't back down easily. Not when she was cornered. The conference room at Michael's office felt too small for the tension it contained. Clara sat across the table, Marcus Bentley at her side. Her face showed no hint of the sister I'd grown up with, just a cold, calculating stranger wearing designer clothes bought with stolen money. Let's skip the pleasantries, Bentley began. My client is willing to drop the will contest if your client agrees to sell all properties and split the proceeds 50-50. Michael's smile never reached his eyes. Interesting offer, considering your client has already embezzled over $400,000 from her father's accounts, forged his signature on loan documents, and conspired with Thomas Weston to defraud her sister. Clara's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. Ridiculous accusations. Really? I pushed the laptop forward and hit play. Clara's voice filled the room. Once we get control of everything, we'll flip it all to Coastal Heights. Thomas promised 15% above the purchase price if we deliver by summer. Bentley tried to interject, but Michael raised his hand. We have 16 hours of recordings like this. Your client's attempt to corrupt Dr. Harris is particularly interesting to the medical board. They've already suspended his license pending investigation. You're bluffing, Clara whispered, but uncertainty crept into her voice. The DA doesn't think so, Michael replied calmly. They're very interested in the evidence we've submitted. Script part separator Clara's composure cracked. You went to the district attorney? Her voice was barely audible. You'd send your own sister to prison? I leaned forward, my heart breaking despite everything. You gave me no choice, Clara. You tried to destroy everything I care about. We can still fix this, she pleaded, suddenly looking like the sister I remembered. Drop the criminal complaints. We'll figure something out. Michael slid a document across the table. Here's our counter-offer. Clara withdraws the will contest completely. She signs over her half of the bookstore back to Eleanor, and she provides a full accounting of all items taken from your father's house for restitution. And the criminal charges? Bentley asked. We'll provide a letter to the DA noting her cooperation, Michael replied. But I can't promise they won't pursue the case. Clara looked trapped. That's not good enough. It's the best you'll get, I said firmly. Dad protected you your whole life, Clara. He covered your gambling debts until he realized you were never going to stop. Now I'm giving you one last chance to do the right thing. You don't understand what they'll do to me if I can't pay, she whispered. Who? The loan sharks. Or Thomas. Her head snapped up. What do you know about Thomas? I know he's been manipulating you for years, using your debts to control you. And I know why. Michael opened a folder. Thomas Weston's development company is a front for money laundering. The FBI has been building a case for months. That's why they're so desperate to acquire these properties quickly. Clara stared at us in disbelief, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. Thomas said it was all legitimate. He promised we'd both come out ahead. He lied, I said simply. Just like you lied to me. The courtroom was packed the following week. Word had spread through our small town about the Morgan sisters' epic battle. Thomas sat stone-faced in the gallery as Michael systematically dismantled Clara's case, playing the damning recordings and presenting evidence of the fraud scheme. When the judge ruled entirely in my favor, Clara didn't even look surprised. She just looked tired. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Through the chaos, I spotted Clara standing alone, abandoned by Bentley and everyone else. "What happens now?" she asked when I approached her. "Thomas was arrested this morning," I said. "The FBI wants to talk to you about testifying against him." She nodded slowly. "And us?" "I don't know, Clara. You've broken something I'm not sure can be fixed." 3 months later, I stood in the bookstore, fully repaired and busier than ever since our story hit the local news. The bell above the door jingled, and Clara walked in, looking smaller somehow in simple jeans and a sweater. "The gambling program is helping," she said without preamble. 6 weeks sober. I nodded, uncertain what to say. "I found this in storage," she continued, placing a small box on the counter. Inside was Mom's recipe book, the one I thought had been lost for years. I kept it safe. Even at my worst, I couldn't sell this. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But as I ran my fingers over my mother's handwriting, I felt something shift between us. A tiny crack in the wall of betrayal, letting in just enough light to see the sister I'd lost. "Coffee," I offered. I was just about to close up. Clara's tentative smile was the first genuine one I'd seen in years. "I'd like that." When family betrays you, sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying them, it's finding the strength to rebuild yourself.